Hey guys, Jim from the McMahon Center. Today we're talking about the Sony A7 III. Let's go ahead and talk about what you're going to get in your kit. So first up, we got the body of the camera. I have it plugged into this monitor so we can talk about menu items and stuff like that. You're going to get a wall charger, so 2 batteries. There's already a battery in here. I'll show you how to change that. This is the wall charger. You can just plug into any outlet. Prongs on the bottom of the battery, same as the charger. It's kind of an in and down. You'll hear that snap. Same thing to come out, in and out. This light will light up, letting you know it's charging. One way to charge it. You can also plug this right into a computer or another outlet for the wall, but I think more useful for the computer if you want to plug it into your computer as you're downloading stuff. Not my preferred way, but this is also available. This goes right into this guy here. So second option. We also have our Rode microphone that goes right onto the hot shoe of our camera here. Comes with this red cable, that goes into the back of the microphone. We open up the side slot. I'll get into it, how to hook it up. But you have your shotgun microphone on top. It's really good for natural sound. I wouldn't recommend it for dialogue or anything that needs to be a kind of a wide, big scene, but really good for natural sound, documentary, that kind of stuff. So a good option. You always want to have this on. The camera will come with a stock lens. So this is a 28-70. Zoom lens. You can do automatic focus. Say you're using a gimbal or something, use it for that. But for the most part, you guys are going to stick to our prime lens. This is our 35 millimeter. All the cameras will come with a 35 millimeter. I'll show you guys how to switch this on. For the most part, you guys are going to be using this. This is your more manual lens, more cinematic professional lens. We'll get more into that. Let's go ahead and talk about the body of the camera. I'll show you guys the different kind of features of the body. First up, we have our on-off switch. Obviously, right up top, you're just kind of flipping the toggle down to on. Then you can see we have these custom buttons. So I have C1, C2, C3 is on the back, and C4 is actually the garbage can. So you have 4 customizable buttons that really come in handy. We'll talk about how to use those. One thing about this camera, it's a really good photography camera as well. So it kind of has functions for both. For our purposes, we're going to use it for videography, but there are some kind of functions that you just want to stay away from. They're more for photography. So we have this kind of lens exposure wheel on the top here for if you're using flash photography or anything like that. This is for kind of adjusting the added exposure for the flash. So for the most part, I'll just stick this to 0. I won't even look at it, but this is for that exposure compensation. For our purposes, we want to be on this cinematic kind of film strip wheel here. You might think you want to turn this on to manual mode, but that's more for photography. So for our purposes, we want to stay on this movie making icon, wheel, film strip icon, whatever you want to call it. So I have that toggled on now, which is good. This is our hot shoe that'll go into our Rode microphone we'll go on to. I have my menu item in the back, menu button on the back. We have our LCD screen that we'll get more into. Right now it's black because it's transmitting through here. Record button here. You can also use this as a record button. We'll take screenshots as well, but for the most part, you're going to use this record button. We also have another wheel here that can be used for shutter speed. You can see now it's changing the f-stop of my camera, so all these buttons are customizable. We have another toggle wheel here that does the same thing. So this camera is set up to use it for both, but we can change it. We have another toggle button here that you can scroll through different options. I'll get more into the menu there. A function button that just offers a couple quick functions like focus mode, focus area ISO, stuff like this. I'm going to get it so that we use the customizable buttons the most. You won't really use this function button too often. We have our main wheel here, so when you go into the menu, this is what you'll probably use the most. It's a touchpad and also a wheel if you want to use that way with a button in the middle. And on that actual wheel itself, you have display. So you can see what it displays if you want this is your full menu, this is your with audio, this is nothing, this is with the histogram. You get the point, you can toggle through, you have your leveler there if you want to make sure you're level. You have a quick ISO button here which says ISO, you can scroll through the ISO. I'll get into that. And then you have your playback button on the bottom of the LCD screen where you can play stuff back. All right, so that's kind of the body function items. Well, let's go ahead and kind of set it up for success so you guys can feel okay with it. I'm going to go ahead and fire it off for now. We'll add on our cinematic lens so that way we can get into a good shooting position. Anytime we change lenses, we always want to make sure we're looking into it, making sure the lens is clean on the front. A lot of times there'll be fingerprints or smudges on the front. We'll make sure this is good. This is really a two-person job, but I'm going to do it as carefully as I can. You never want to leave the lens or the sensor exposed for a long time, but I'm going to go ahead and pull this, push this button on the bottom here and twist counterclockwise till the lens becomes loose. Anytime I'm changing a lens, I want to cover the sensor. As I change it, I would hand it off to my second person here. They would verbally say they got it. They would hand me my next lens here. And then I'm going ahead and just lining up this red dot here with my white dot on my camera until we get into this proper groove. You can hear it start to kind of go into place, and then it'll click right into place. Once you hear that click, you know you're nice and snug. If it doesn't feel like it's really connected, go ahead and take it off and redo it again. But once you hear that click, you're in a good spot. All right, so now I can go ahead and put my stock lens away. We can go ahead and set up our audio. So we have our hot shoe mount here that is a kind of an up and down securing kind of wheel here. I'll go ahead and put it all the way in my hot shoe. Slide it right in there. Make sure this is nice and loose to start. So now we can slide it in, tighten it all the way down to the bottom. And then if we go ahead and open the side compartment here, you can see the red circle here is where we want to connect our red cable, audio cable. Goes nice in color. So now we're really good for success. We can put our chargers away, have our extra battery on hand, and this is really what your rig is going to look like. You have your audio set up and you have a nice manual lens. Let's go ahead and fire up our camera. We can see what we're looking at here. So now you guys can see with the manual lens, it's not going to give you an f-stop readout. That's okay. We have it right on our lens so we can look and see exactly what we're looking at. It does have a nice metering mode here, so now it's telling me it's in this moment we're properly exposed. You know, for the actual metering on the camera, it's telling us that it's pretty good exposure. But remember, we want to expose for our subject and then go from there. So if I'm exposing for that chair or for, say, this table or something that makes the most sense for my story, I would expose for that. So now I'm exposed for that chair in a good spot. All right, we can see our audio. We got good levels here. We're going to set up a hot button to be able to change that. Right now it's not set up, but I'll show you how to do that. We want to make sure this is in a custom key in case somebody's really loud, like I am talking now. We want to get this to a nice manageable level. On the menu itself, let's just kind of roll through everything. We're in manual mode, which is good. Card is formatted, so we have 2 hours, 30 minutes, 38 minutes to shoot, which is great. Right now we're shooting in 60p. We're going to change that to 24p. I'll show you how. 93% battery, automatic white balance. We'll change this to custom white balance. We'll change a bunch of things, but just get used to this menu. ISO 800. 1/60, which we're going to change. It's got a picture profile on. Picture profile 6, we'll change that. But this is what you're going to see when you fire it off the bat. All right, let's go through the menu and just make sure that everything is looking good and we're all on the same page. I'm going to go through each menu item. And remember, this is a photography camera as well. So these first couple items are really going to be photography based, but we'll make sure that we're in a good spot. So first couple, not too many that we have to worry about. We're going to select our medias in slot 1. This camera has the ability to do kind of dual slots. So if you have multiple SD cards and you want to record in multiple cards, that's cool. Always a good idea. Focus mode, obviously we want to make sure we're in manual for here. Focus area, it's going to be manual, so it doesn't really matter. Let's keep toggling through. Automatic focus, this is more for photography. We're in that kind of photography icon, but there are some things that we need in here. So let's keep going. So we're in exposure, which is page 9 out of 14, icon 1. ISO, we're going to set this up to a hotkey button, and it's already on our camera, but this is where we can go and set up ISO. So for this camera, the lowest ISO we can go is 100. As we start to get into some picture profiles, it's going to be a little higher. But a good idea is to always keep it on the native or the lowest ISO. Depending on the light you have available and on set, you want to keep this light this exposure as low as you can go to give you the cleanest image. I really like 800 on this camera. It shoots a nice clean image, so for now I'll stay on 800. Gives me a nice range to kind of play with. So that's page 9, you want to remember that. Let's see what else we got. So flash, we're talking about flash here, not really needed for our purposes. Let's go ahead and turn on or off our picture profile. So we have 9 different picture profiles. I would recommend starting with it off and doing some tests and see what you like here. But right now you can see the image is picture profile off. I really like using picture profile 9, which is a log format. You guys can mess around with that. Really do some tests to dial in your exposure. especially if you're outside, you want to get some extra dynamic range. This picture profile 9 is really nice. For right now, I'll just turn it off so you guys can kind of see the real power of the camera. So that's where picture profile is in page 12 out of 14. Focus magnifier. I'll show you how to set this up to a hotkey, but peaking setting on this camera. Peaking, if you guys aren't familiar, it's just kind of a coloring where it'll color the highlights that the camera thinks are in focus. It'll give it a color. Right now it's set up to red, so you'll see it on the actual camera, but not on here, I don't think. It'll tell you that any highlights that it thinks are in focus, it'll give a little red tinge to. It's not perfect. I don't recommend relying on it, but it's a tool that this camera has, and a lot of cameras have, so you can mess around with it if you like. All right, moving on to icon 2, movie mode. We're in manual exposure, which is what we want. This is where we can go ahead and change our file format. So for this purpose, I'm going to stay in HD because I need it to project the monitor settings. But go ahead and check out your 4K settings. There's a lot of cool settings you can mess around with. But if you're not shooting in 4K, I'd recommend this XAVC Standard HD. And then for our class purposes, we want to stick around to 24p, 50 megabits per second. But this camera does have a really good slow motion, and it has the highest megabits per second. So if you know you're going to shoot something in slow motion or a portion of your narrative or your video, you might want to set up a slow and quick, which I'll show you how to do that, where you can set up to shoot in 24p and 50 megabits per second, but you'll have a backup to shoot in 120p and 100 megabits per second, which is really nice quality slow-mo. That's what I think a really good power of this camera is. If you're doing, say, a commercial for a product, you might want to shoot a lot of your B-roll footage of that product shot in slow motion because it's such high quality. But for now, we're going to shoot in our 24p, 50 megabits per second, which is a great format. This is where you can do that S and Q, that slow and quick I was telling you about, where your regular will be 24 and then your like slow quick will be in that slow-mo format. So then it's just a click of a button, whereas if you're on set and you got a lot of people waiting for you, it's just one click of a button instead of going through all of these menu items. All right, so that's how we get that. Proxy settings, if you're shooting in 4K but you don't want to edit in 4K, you go ahead and add a proxy on, so you can put on a proxy of like 720p. That way you can edit in 720p and just replace the footage later, which is a cool thing. All right, so a lot of the audio, the auto kind of things of this camera are available, which you can use on the stock lens if you need to, if you're shooting by yourself and you can't pull focus for some reason. But for this lens, mostly we're going to stay in manual. For audio recording, we want this obviously on. Audio record level, we want to set this up to a hotkey where we can just push a hotkey and this will pop up. That way we can dial in. If somebody's a little too loud, we can just go down to like a level 3. That way they're peaking right at -12, which is a really nice level. If I'm a little softer, maybe I want to go to a -5, and then it gets a little too loud. So find the proper level. You're going to want to have to set that up really quick. So you want this to a hotkey. That way you can adjust audio kind of on the fly. All right, audio level display on is good. Marker displays, if you want to have different markers, say you're shooting in 4:3 or you want to have the grid on your camera on display, this is where you can adjust that. Let's see, steady shot, you can have it on. I always feel like it kind of loses a little resolution in the camera, so it's up to you. Do some tests with that before you kind of choose. Display button. On this camera here, the display will be on the LCD screen. Unless the camera senses you're covering the eyepiece, it'll think it's your face putting your eye in the eyepiece, so it'll switch to that. This is where you can choose only one thing. I can't choose it now because I have this in, but this is where you can choose either monitor or finder. Finder would be the eyepiece. There are times where I'm shooting outside and there's a shadow on top of the monitor. It's not really me, but it's a shadow, and the camera will think it's my face going into the eyepiece, so I'll lose image for a second. So what I like to do, if I know I'm going to use just the eyepiece or just the monitor, I'll set it up for that. All right, grids. If you want to have grid line, rule of thirds, always a good idea to keep those on. All right, here we are in custom key. So let's go to our second one, which is our movie mode, custom key, and let's see what we got going on. So custom balance 1 is white balance, which is good. I like that. We'll talk about white balance in a second. Custom 2 button is ISO. We already have ISO on the camera, if you remember that, so we don't need to do that. So let's find our our audio. So let's see, let's find audio. I think it's on maybe page 1 or page 2 or something. Let's see if we can find it. So we're looking for audio, not audio signals, we're looking for audio level. So here it is, page 10 out of 18. So now our custom button 2 is audio level display, which is really good. Custom button 3 is, it follows a different menu. So, oh, I see what's going on. So this is kind of set up to follow a different button on the thing. So let's go ahead and we'll set this up to be aperture. So now we have it set up just for this. What it was doing is following a different custom key for a different icon for photography, but now it makes sense. So custom button 1 is white balance, custom 2 is audio display, custom 3, let's do this, to where you might want peaking on, you might want zebras. What I like to do is a focus area. That way I can just do a quick focus check. So focus magnifier is what I want there. Custom button 4, which is the trash can if you remember, let's set this up to be something else that we would use. Let's do, let's say picture profile, because you might want to use it. Or you could do peaking if you want to kind of mess around with that. But for now I'll do picture profile because that's pretty nice to have on in case you change your mind. If I'm shooting outside, sometimes I'll use the raw, and then if I'm shooting inside, a lot of times I won't. So it's good to have that option. All right, so that's page 8 out of 9 on the film camera icon. And that's kind of what we're pretty good on those menu items. Through this network thing, this is just for smartphone stuff. You're not going to have to worry about this unless you're using a monitor that's like through Wi-Fi. We can get to that if that comes up. But let's keep going through the menu into playback. In the playback icon, 3 out of 4. Slot 1 is good. Everything is looking good for this one. Let's keep going. We're going to go ahead and set up our formatting our card. So let's see, anything that we need on here. This is looking all right. This is looking good. USB, this is just kind of like another different thing. So here's our format in the kind of briefcase icon there, 5 out of 7. Let's go ahead and format. It's going to format slot 1, the card that's in there, and that's what I want to do. So this is one of the first things you should do, is just erase all the footage from the previous shooter on here. So that'll take 1 second. All right, that's good. Let's see if there's anything else that we're going to have to worry about here. I don't believe there is. Adding items. All right, so that's kind of through the menu. Then you guys are in a good spot. Let's go ahead and check out our image, and we can kind of adjust anything that we need there. So let's go on to our white balance and just make sure that we're white balance. I'll grab a piece of paper. For you guys, what you guys want to do, there's a bunch of different options you can mess around with, but what we're most used to in our classes is this. Let's find it all the way at the bottom, is our custom white balance set. Once you push this, I'll go ahead and grab a piece of paper. I'll get a white piece of paper in 1 second. All right, so now I want to keep my paper where the most light is, and I want to focus on it as much as I can. Might be a little too exposed, but I want to put this right in the middle. The camera is going to register at 5600, which is nice. That's where we're using daylights in here. That way that'll, and I probably should have exposed better, but that way it'll use exactly what I want as white balance instead of using, obviously, automatic white balance, which will change all around. All right, you can scroll through all these, and these are already kind of custom set, 56. You can just dial it in manually, too. There's a bunch of different options you guys can use for that. But the one all the way to the bottom is what we're used to, where we set it up ourselves. So yeah, that's white balance. Let's see for audio display level is on. All right. Probably wanted a different one there, but audio display level is good. We already have that on, which is great. Our custom key 3 is this kind of zoom that helps me in focus, which is great because if I don't zoom in, like from here, it looks like I'm in focus, but once I zoom in, I know I'm not on focus in that chair, which is cool. All right, everything else looks good. We're in, let's see, we're shooting in, let's go ahead and change the shutter. Since we're shooting in 24p, we want to be in 50. This camera doesn't go over 1/48, it just does levels of 10, but 1/50 is good. Everything else is looking good though. We're shooting in 24p, 50 megabits per second, 1/50. Exposure is on point. ISO is 800. Everything else is looking good. That's kind of a basic overview of the camera, guys. Again, this is the Sony A7 III. I think we went over most of the menu items here. Does have this kind of lanyard over the shoulder kind of holder here. If you want to take that off, just make sure you put it back on when you're done. Sometimes it gets in the way. But that's a camera. There's a lot of different functions, a lot of things I think you guys will like about it. I really like the custom key, custom buttons on here. But that's the Sony A7 III, guys. If you have any questions, feel free to stop by. Again, this is Jim from the McMahon Center. Thanks for watching.